Struggling, though, with what to speak about. I couldn't come up with a fresh message, and I mentioned it to Jenna, and she said, well, why don't you do something with Sim? The church here has been very generous in helping him, and, they don't know anything about him. Why don't you do something with him? And I thought, I got a great deal when I married her, because I married her for her looks. And I just got the big genius brain for free. So I thought, this is a great idea. So I brought it up to Sim, and he thought, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So I sat down and did a conversation / interview with him, and it was over an hour. And so I was cutting it down, and I got it to about 45 minutes, and I used Jenna's genius mind again to cut it down to about 30 minutes. And I am grateful, and I have to say that I have a newfound respect for the folks that win the Emmy for interviewing and the folks that win the Oscar for editing. They deserve it, because it was a challenge. So I just wanted to present this for you today, and like I said, it's about 30 minutes, so if you need to check out, don't feel bad about it, but I hope that you're able to get a good sense about what his life is like, who he is, and the kind of work that he does, the environment he's in. It was really edifying for me to be able to produce this, and I just have to say, I did a lot of editing because there were a lot of ums and and yeah. So it's going to kind of jump at times a lot. So I just ask you to bear with it. And if there are questions that you should have asked this, I'm sorry. Like I said, I've never done something like this before. So I hope you enjoy it and find it edifying. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening, brother.
Yeah, evening, morning, day.
I very much appreciate your time, brother. I know that you're a very busy man, so for you to take your time out, greatly appreciated. I thought that this would be a good opportunity for the brothers here to get a chance to meet you and learn a little bit more about you and the work that you're doing there. So you were sending me updates like every week of the work that you were doing, and it seemed like every week you're baptizing 1, 2, 3, 4 people. I'm thinking, man, this guy is in the water more than Aquaman. This guy is doing the work. And so I just was very impressed with, as we, became more and more friends, that I was impressed with just how much work that you were doing in the kingdom. What I wanted to do is, I had given you some ideas of what to, there she is. She's feeling better now?
Hello. Yeah, she is good.
She is good. Yeah.
She doesn't want to come on the bench.
And this is your wife, Abigail?
That's Abigail.
Hello, Abigail.
Hello, how are you, brother?
I am just so blessed. I could talk about my blessings until the day I died and never run out. Like I was telling your husband, we're grateful to be able to help you. And how is your back?
Yes, I'm now doing better.
You're doing better? That's great. Yeah, Sim has told me that you're having some pain with your spine, and that I know that's a scary thing. Why don't you go ahead and tell about your life? How when you were born, what your family life was like with your parents. Just give us an idea of where you grew up, what it was like growing up, and kind of give us an idea of what a young Sim looked like before the Sim that we see now.
Well, my life is it started very well, but along the line something bad happened, and it was a blessing in disguise.
What was that?
When my father was still alive, everything was okay because he was the one providing everything.
Yeah.
If I think of it today, I always say God did it for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if my father was alive today, maybe I would not be preaching.
When you were growing up, was your father a Christian? Was he a believer, and that's how you were brought up, or did you come to Christ later in life?
My father wasn't a Christian.
He was not a Christian.
He was not a Christian,
Oh.
and he used to drink. He had 2 wives. But one thing for sure I knew about him is that he would always provide us with everything we needed.
You talk about him in the past tense. What happened with him? He died, right? How old were you, and how did that affect your life at that point?
When he passed away, I was about. That's when he passed away. I was around 16.
So you were 16 when he passed
Yes.
away. Now, you said he had 2 wives. Was he with you every day, or did he just split times between, sounds like 2 different families?
Yeah, he would share times with both the families.
What kind of work did he do that he provided for your family?
He was working at a company that produces milk.
A company that produces milk, like a dairy? Yeah.
Yeah, dairy. And he would go in the streets selling dairy. By that time, our country was still, the economy was very good, and the little he had would support us.
So he dies, and he's no longer able to support you. What do you do then, and how does your life change with his death to cause you to, I'm assuming you become like the head of the household. Are you the oldest son? So you then
I'm the oldest son, and after me there are 2 girls.
Ah, okay. So you have 2 younger sisters. So I'm assuming that you now have to step up and be the provider.
Yes.
Did that mean you have to quit going to school in order to go to work all the time, or were you able to continue to go to school?
As an oldest son, I had to quit the school. And when my father passed away, my mother was a Christian.
Your mother was a Christian.
And she is the one who had a very big influence on me to become a Christian and also to become a gospel preacher.
So was she a Christian the whole time you were growing up, and she influenced you all the time?
Yes, she was a Christian even when my father was still alive.
You were like Timothy. You had this strong mother that's preaching to you as a young man and giving you that background that you use every day now.
Yes. When I quit school, I started staying with a local preacher where my mother and I used to attend our church services. And I went to work for a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to raise tuition so that I can go to a Bible school.
How are you working to get the tuition paid for?
I worked for this preacher for almost a year.
So you worked for a preacher, and he paid you to give you the tuition to go to the Bible school.
I worked for a year, and he did not give me the money that time.
Okay, go ahead.
Waiting for another year. So waiting for another year when I will start my preacher training. So he never gave me the man. Instead, he paid the man to the school.
Okay. So your tuition was taken care of, so that you didn't at least have to pay for it. When do you meet your wife? How do you meet your wife? And tell us a little bit about your wife, and then also your children.
When I finished my preacher training, I went to Harare, which is the capital city of Zimbabwe.
Of Zimbabwe, right.
And there I started preaching at a congregation where my wife and her parents were members there.
Ah.
Yeah, because the father was an elder, so I just loved the family and Abigail's character, and proposed to her. That's when we started dating.
Before you even started dating, you got permission from her daddy?
No, I didn't ask the permission from the dad.
Oh, okay.
Instead, we told him after.
Oh, wait, so you started dating and they didn't know about it?
Yes.
All right. This is interesting. Okay. So now, did she live at home with them?
Yes.
Oh, Sim is slicking them. Okay. So how long did you date her? And it sounds like she comes from good parentage, a good family. So
She is from a very good Christian background.
that's fantastic. That makes a lot of difference.
Which I think a background is a Christian background for Abigail is better than mine.
How long did you date her before you guys got married? How long did you date?
I think it was almost 2 years.
So you get married and you are a gospel preacher at that point?
Yeah, I was a gospel preacher there in Harare, and then I left Harare for Rusape.
How far is where you went from Harare?
It's almost 2.5 hour drive.
You guys go, and then how long are you married before you have your son, Tertius?
I think a year.
How did you come to name him after a man in the Bible, one of Paul's helpers, who I don't think is mentioned more than once or twice?
I just, when I was still in school, a white guy taught us the book of Romans.
A white guy?
Yes. He was a white guy from Texas. That's when I got that name.
Okay. So
I was kind of like, if I get married and the Lord blesses me with a son, I will definitely name him Tertius. And God answered my prayer.
There you go.
And my first son, the name was already there.
He's at university right now, yeah?
He's in university now in Cyprus.
Did he graduate from college?
Yeah, he just studied for a year.
He just went to university for a year. So is he going to Cyprus to continue college and his studies there in Cyprus?
He has gone there. He has started another program there.
Ah, okay. You sent me a copy of his report card, and he's doing wonderfully well. And on that report card, he's got almost all A's and a couple of B's. So he must be a bright, good student.
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit on Tertius.
Yes, go please.
The reason why he left Zimbabwe and he decided to go to Cyprus, it's because he was complaining that here they are not studying, there's no education, teachers are always on strike. So on his personal capacity, he looked for a scholarship. And fortunately, he got that one, and he decided to leave for Cyprus.
And I can imagine that was difficult for you to have him move that far away. You know.
Yeah, it was very difficult, very expensive.
I can imagine. So that's Tertius. So he's 20 years old?
He's 20 years old now.
Okay. And then you have Ayala, and she's 2.
Yeah, a 20-year-old son, the first one, and the last one, 2 years.
You also have other children between the two of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of them, a boy and a girl.
So, but that's your oldest and youngest is Tertius, that's 20, and Ayala, that's 2. That's kind of your family there. Does your wife have a job? Does she go and work, or is she just going with you to do ministry?
My wife is not working. She goes with me wherever I go to preach. At times we split depending on what we are going to do on that particular day.
Tell us what it's like there in Zimbabwe, not just where you live in Rusape, but kind of Zimbabwe as a whole, just in, like the secular world, the government, and just lifestyle there? What does that look like?
Zimbabwe is generally Zimbabweans are peace-loving people. They love visitors. They are poor.
The economy is not good there, right?
Yes, the economy is not good, and most people depend on farming. Whether a person is employed or not, somewhere, somehow, they do the farming.
There aren't a lot of non-farming jobs there. A lot of people are forced to raise their own food if they're going to eat. And that was a problem that you had earlier this year, where you had that typhoon or tsunami that came through and damaged a bunch of the crops. And as soon as that storm went through, it didn't leave any rain with it, because then you had no rain. You had asked for prayers for that, and I was praying, and I asked the congregation here to pray. And then you sent me a message, and it broke my heart, because you showed pictures of all the crops that were dead and withering, and you said all hope is lost. That phrase was just, oh, that hurt. Just the idea of the brethren there, and even just the people of Zimbabwe seeing what this is their livelihood, in not even the sense of just making money, but this is what they need to live every day, and it was taken away. How do things like that affect how you preach to those that you go to preach to? How does almost tragedy like that, and something that causes such concern and worry, how do you take that and preach the gospel?
Yeah, it affects us a lot, especially during the times when we don't have rains, or either we have famine. It affects us a lot, especially in our preaching. We also have brethren who support us.
Okay.
So from that little you are supported with, at the end of the day, you are supposed to take a few dollars and help other Christians whom you meet who are in need, because many of them will be affected. So some become sick, and some you visit them in their homes, they don't have food and whatever, and to take from what you are getting and help the brethren.
How I think God intended is for us to be able to help our brethren. We're a world away. You're on the other side of the world to me, but it's wonderful to know that we can help the brethren there with something as necessary as food. But in your preaching to those that are in want, do you approach that different than where if you go to preach in Harare, to where the need isn't? It doesn't seem like the need would be as desperate. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it affects a lot, because just imagine someone is hungry, and just telling them that Jesus loves you, he died for us, he is our Savior, but without necessarily bringing things that they can touch. It affects a lot how you preach and how you present your lesson. So at times, by helping them, you are trying to balance the two, the spiritual aspect and the physical needs of that person.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that is pretty difficult sometimes when you're...
It's difficult at times, and if you do that, there's a chance that they will listen to you, because you have provided some way, somehow, their physical needs.
It makes it, you can preach how God, when Jesus is on the Sermon on the Mount, and he's talking about the Beatitudes, and he says that, you being evil know how to provide for your children, how much more will God in heaven provide for you? And then you make a statement like that, and then you're able to give them some help for their daily lives, whether it be food or whatever it is they need. I would imagine that's very helpful in getting them to believe the gospel.
But on that note, there is also a danger again. Remember, Jesus said one time he gave them food, the 4,000 and the 5,000, and later on, they were seeking him because they needed food.
Right.
It's good, but it's also
You got to be careful.
it's also bad if people follow you because you have provided them with some help.
Right. Then that's a great point. So you go and you preach and you see how hard it is for these brothers and sisters and the people that you're preaching to, how hard their life is. And I would imagine you preach there, you go away, and then you come back sometime later, and things maybe they haven't improved much. How does that affect your encouragement just for you? How is it? It must be discouraging at some level, but how do you find encouragement when you're faced with things like that?
Yeah, as a human being, you sometimes get affected when you try hard to help and maybe results don't come.
Right.
Or maybe you help trying to show the people the real and sound gospel. But at the end, you see their reaction, they are not really showing it. Yeah, it affects a lot. But through my experience in preaching, I used to share with the brethren whatever I do and whatever I encounter in my preaching. Some years back, an old man told me that you don't have to worry about the reactions and what the people think after you have done something. But the most important is that you have to make sure that you have planted the seed, which is the word of God. That is what is very important. So I have lived with it. I've seen that it's working.
It might take a while, but you think, and I was going to ask you about that too, is here it seems like the church is really starting to be in decline, which is one of the reasons I wanted to be able to talk to you to give a perspective on, fulfilling that Matthew 28 command of go and make disciples. Because I don't think that's happening here in America like it needs to be. And so I'm trying to encourage the people that I have influence over to go and do that, because that's how the church is going to grow, as you go out and you make disciples. And that's exactly what you're doing. How is that going in Zimbabwe with respect to, are you seeing more and more people coming to the gospel, or do you see it in decline? Do you see the church there in Africa growing? Do you see it not growing?
I have some mixed feelings over that. Like now I am seeing the church, it's like growing. Yeah, I'm seeing the church growing in Zimbabwe. But one question that has come into my mind is, why is the church growing? My answer could be, I think the church right now is growing because of the nature and the background of our country.
Okay, explain that. That's interesting.
Maybe poverty is driving people to accept the gospel.
That's not surprising that
Go ahead. So I was thinking to myself, what if one day our economy becomes stable? What will be the situation like? And my answer that comes to my mind is maybe the church will start again to decline.
Yeah, that's a great point, because...
That's my opinion.
Okay. It doesn't surprise me that you would have that opinion, because it almost seems like that's part of the issue in America is we have so much here. When you have so much, it becomes more and more difficult to be grateful for what you have. So that's an interesting take on that. How does the government of Zimbabwe treat you as a gospel? How do they view the church? How does the government of Zimbabwe there, does it help, does it hurt, or is it indifferent to the gospel?
Right, I will come to that question later. But I wanted to conclude my opinion by saying I have tried to encourage other preachers take advantage of the poverty people are facing right now by constantly teaching the sound doctrine, to be consistent in our teaching. I think That is the only way that can help in the future.
So when you say
in whatever happens in the future.
So when you say preaching the sound gospel, what do you mean by the sound gospel versus unsound gospel?
By sound doctrine, I'm just simply trying to say to speak where the Bible speaks, be silent where the Bible is silent, no addition, no subtraction, no misuse of the scriptures. That's what I'm trying to say.
I appreciate the idea of making sure that you're preaching the sound gospel.
Right. On the issue of the government, politicians are corrupt everywhere you go.
How does their corruption affect you?
It affects a lot because when a country is not developing, you are also affected. When others go hungry, you are also affected. When there is rate which is high, unemployment rate which is high, you are also affected. This will create more thieves and drug abuse and whatever.
The government itself isn't necessarily against you spreading the gospel. The problem is that because of the way the government is being run, the issue is the crime that's able to flourish and how it affects the individual saints who are trying to get through their day and trying to continue to dwell with God, and yet they're seeing so much more negativity around them that is directly affecting them every day.
Yeah, crime is now high. There are many factors to that. But as far as preaching the gospel is concerned, we don't have problem with our government as far as preaching the gospel is concerned. We go wherever we want and we preach anytime. They don't mind about that. But I have learned that if you want to preach the gospel freely in Zimbabwe without any hindrance, you don't have to involve yourself into politics.
That's good, because I think part of the problem in America is there's too many Christians that want to bring politics also into the church and say, well, if you're really a Christian, you have to have this political ideology. And I think that's a very dangerous position to take. When you have a worship service, kind of tell us what that looks like as far as where do you guys meet? I know that in some places you meet in a building, but not always.
Currently, I'm working with 3 congregations. One in the area where I stay, the other is on the northeast of my house, maybe about 8 miles away from my home. And the other one is on the east, which is almost 11 miles from my house.
And so when you go to preach because you go preach other places too. I know that you've gone to northeast of even Rusape to preach to congregations out there. But when that's the case, do they don't all have buildings to come and worship under a roof, correct?
A few do have buildings, but the majority don't have. If they are meeting under a roof, maybe it's a rented.
It's a rented building?
Proper, yes.
For those that aren't in a building, you guys are just gathering around a large shade tree, right?
Yeah, if you don't have a building, like in one of the congregations I'm working with, we congregate under a tree.
Yeah, that's if we do that here, it's because it's a nice day and we want to go outside because it's a nice day. It doesn't sound like there are options. That's how we're going to do it there because we don't have a building. That's another thing I think we take for granted here. What are the biggest physical and spiritual needs that you, but also the church there have?
The problem we are facing spiritually is that most of our people, they don't have that knowledge when it comes to scripture.
And is that because
very few?
Is that because you don't even have access to Bibles, so people can't study for themselves, or is it people can't even read?
We have some who cannot even read.
Also, you asked for funds recently just to get Bibles, and you've been sending pictures, and those are wonderful. But how many people even have a Bible of their own to read? Is that a common thing, or is it sounds like it's not very common.
It's now a common thing
Okay.
that people have their own Bibles. From the help we are getting from you, brethren, most Christians now do have their own Bibles.
I'm really glad to hear that, because that's definitely going to be a huge thing, and not only helping spread the gospel, but making more deeply faithful believers, because they can
Yes.
read and they can see, and it's going to cause them to become stronger believers, and even those that'll go out and spread the gospel. When we're saying prayers, it sounds like that's one of the things we need to be praying about, is that the believers there are being like the Bereans. They're reading and studying the scriptures daily so that they can develop a deeper relationship with God. Is there anything else spiritually that we can be supportive in? Or is that really just the biggest thing?
I think that's the biggest thing. And if other study material are available, you can send there. Would appreciate that very much.
I don't think I have any other questions. I guess I'll just ask a final one that I have is, what kind of changes are you seeing just as the gospel gets spread? So you're out spreading the gospels, making new disciples. Are you seeing that have an effect just on, maybe the village itself or at large, or are you able to see much of a change just in the society there around you as you're making disciples, or is it still not enough yet to where it's having a larger effect?
The change takes a lot of years to come by. It's a very, very, very slow process.
I hope that isn't a discouragement to you to continue to go out and do the work, because it can be hard to continue to do the hard work all the time and not see the results, but just trusting that the seed I'm planting now, it'll come to fruition maybe years later. I can definitely understand it being a challenge to just continue to do the work and not seeing, but you rest in the knowledge that it might be rough, but just knowing that eventually is going to be the outcome of all this hard work, I know is something that you take in the back of your mind, and it keeps you going. So is there anything else that you would like to say to the brethren here that you would like us to know, in anything?
I really appreciate your help. Really appreciate your financial help to me.
Brother, like I said, I really appreciate the time, and I know that I don't know how late it is there. It's probably 8 o'clock or something, but I'm glad we were able to make this happen, because I know that the brethren that have been helping with the support have come back. There's been several that come back and go, hey, how about an update on what's going on with Sim? Did they get the Bibles? Did they get the food? And yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said something. I meant to do it, and I didn't. But I forwarded some of the reports that you've sent me, and I've got really good feedback on those. So, all right, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you down the road. I'll talk to you again.
Sure.
All right. Love you, brother.
Greet your family. Love you.
Very quickly, if you'll just indulge me, I've been asked how did I meet him, and friend requested me on Facebook 4 or 5 years ago, and I checked him out, who he was, and he is a Facebook friend of a woman that I knew from my days in Texas, and I thought, all right, it must be a good guy. She's a smart woman. So I friended him, and immediately he was giving me updates of what he was doing, and so we became friendly that way. And it's been a trip getting to know him, because he's always positive, he's always got good news, and even when I know it's a struggle for him, he just, like I said, he continues to do the work. And so I'm sorry if you found that drier than a week-old crouton, but it was really edifying to me to be able to do that and be able to present it so that you guys have an idea of the kind of things that he's doing and the kind of environment that he's working in. So I really appreciate the time.